Hello, welcome everyone to our Reproductive Justice Roundtable. My name is Carla Peña Vasconcelos, and I am a board member of the North County San Diego Women's March. Our organization is committed to providing a platform to elevate and empower the voices of our communities, especially women who identify as persons who identify as women, the LGBTQ plus community, BIPOC people across North County San Diego and beyond. Today, we are very happy to share this space of conversation with a group of women, multi-generational, to share their thoughts, stories, experiences, and unique perspectives and how they live and understand reproductive justice. We're going to start with introductions today so you can know each one of our guests today. So let's start with Sue. Sue, are you there?
Oh, hi, Carla. Thank you. I always love working with Carla. She just brings such a wonderful energy to the table, and the literal table and the figurative table. My name is Sue Alderson, and I'm one of the founding members of the North County San Diego Women's March. We had our first march, I think it was 6 years ago, and it was a march in person. And as time has moved on and technology has changed and the world we live in has changed, we're doing this one virtually this year. And we do it virtually to protect our entire community. Again, I'm going to echo Carla. I'm excited, beyond excited, that we have an amazing group of young women or identifying women who are willing to talk about issues of reproductive justice and reproductive rights. And for some of us, this is not an easy conversation. So again, I'm Sue Alderson. Welcome to the roundtable. Carla, thank you so much for agreeing to be the hostess and our host. And now it's time for the young women. So
thank you, Sue. So let's go with Lauren. Are you there?
Yes. Hi. I'm super excited to be here. It's my first roundtable, but I'm very excited to share my thoughts and my experiences with everyone. I'm a recent graduate from Cal State San Marcos. I now have a degree in criminology, sociology, and Spanish. I'm excited to share all my experiences and to hear the experiences from others.
Excellent. Welcome, Lauren. Miranda?
Hi, my name is Miranda. I'm currently going to Cal State San Marcos, majoring in criminal justice and sociology with a minor in women's gender and sexuality studies. And I'm super excited to be here and be part of this roundtable.
Welcome, Miranda. Marissa?
Hi, my name is Marissa Ramos, and I'm also very excited to be here. I am 17, and I am a senior at Rancho Buena Vista High School.
Welcome, Marissa. Wendy?
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Wendy Luna. I'm 17 years old and a senior at Rancho Buena Vista.
Welcome, Wendy. So before bringing some questions to the table, to our group, we would love to hear from each one of you, of course, with care and an open heart about this challenging and very interesting, important topic for our community. And we'd like first to invite Sue to provide us with a brief overview about reproductive justice. Sue?
Well, thank you, Carla. I spent a lot of time thinking about issues of rights and justice. And I'm old enough to have been involved with reproductive rights and Roe v. Wade and when that started. And to remember when that decision was based on a woman's right to choose, but it was based on privacy. And it has since morphed into something way bigger and more than I'm going to discuss right now. From the reproductive rights perspective, we moved into reproductive justice. Reproductive justice addresses the issue of, even though it's codified into law, it doesn't mean that all people who are in need of reproductive care receive reproductive care. So we're looking at women of color, we're looking at poor women, we're looking at the trans community, we're looking at migrant workers, we're looking at environmental issues, we're looking at an inability to even to access the clinics or to access the medical facilities because people don't have the time or they can't get off work or there's not one in their community. We're also looking at issues around racial justice and how that impacts the care that people receive. We look at the whole issue of paid family leave. We look at the opportunity for people to be able to make their own decision. And if they decide to have a family, that they can raise the family in a healthy environment. And when we think about migrant women, and we think about poor women, and we think about some of the factories where women work, I just wonder oftentimes how healthy that environment is for the mom and for the child. So reproductive justice is an encompassing issue. Oftentimes people don't know what their rights are. Young women, teens in the state of California are entitled to it is their legal right to receive an education. It's their right to get treated for STDs. It's their right to get contraception. It's their right to decide if they're going to have a child or not. It is their individual right, and is their right to do that privately. They do not need to get a permission from an adult person. So when we look at the issue of reproductive justice, it encompasses, when we talk about the intersectionality of people all the time, it's a movement that impacts all women identifying trans, the LGBTQ plus community, because even again, once I said, though it is codified into law, it doesn't mean that people have access or information or knowledge about what reproductive justice represents. That's the short form of it. There's been a movement since the 1990s. Sister Song was one of the first to come out and identify as a group of Black women that came out and identified these specific issues around reproductive rights were not part of my worldview. So, or they're part of my worldview, but I didn't have access to them. So we're moving it, and it is an issue that impacts the entire community. So that's the easy overview of reproductive justice.
Thank you, Sue. So as we can all see, the topic of reproductive justice really encompasses many spheres of our lives, right? And consider the right to have a child, not having, or when you decide to having in a secure environment, and many other topics related. So to start off conversation today, I would like to bring to the table the first question. And the first question is, what is reproductive justice for you? So when we talk about reproductive justice, I would love to invite you all to share your perspectives and your experiences about what does that mean for you and your life in your community. So let's start with bringing back our roundtable with our guests so we can start the conversation. Awesome. So who wants to provide their first perspective on what is reproductive justice for you?
I'll start. So reproductive justice for me is having safe and privacy to the decisions of my body, to either have an abortion, on birth control, on education, and just health. Reproductive justice is having the decision of what I can do to my body. And then do we really talk about reproductive justice? In our culture, my Mexican family, we really don't talk much about this because of religion, and then older generations, it's just something that we don't talk about. It's taboo. And so, yeah, we barely talk about it, but it should be spoken about.
I completely agree to go off what Miranda was saying. Yeah, definitely from a cultural perspective, it is taboo. I myself also come from a Latinx background, and I grew up in a strict Christian household. So, you know, even thinking about abortion was just out of the question. It wasn't a choice that I had, or even a choice that we were able to have if, it did come to that. It was just like straight up no, and that's what we were taught. So now being able to go to college and finishing my college experience, I was actually able to learn what reproductive justice is. I think often it gets lost in the translation of, oh, it's just simply abortion and your right to have an abortion, and that's it. But it really goes far beyond that, and what Sue was saying as well. it's really just a whole spectrum of what women are able to have and to choose. You know, having that access to contraceptives or even the knowledge of what they can do and what they should be doing to your body, is just not out there. You know, coming from through high school, like we had a sex ed class, but it was just to talk about the consequences of having sex, like unplanned pregnancy, HIV, like all of the STDs, STIs, but it was never about being able to create that safe environment of if you do want to have a child, can you raise a child, what you need to have in order to raise a child. And none of that is talked about until it happens and you're living through it and you're trying to find those resources, which is not always readily available.
To me, reproductive justice is having a full personal body autonomy to my own body. And I think it's just having the knowledge because, like Miranda and Lauren said, that in high school they teach about sex ed, but it's nothing like they don't give you options about what you can do. Like it's like Lauren said, it's just consequences. And I think that it's very important to have these conversations about abortion.
Reproductive rights to me is the right to privacy over my own body. I think it's what my other partners have said. It's the access to anything, but most of all, the privacy to my own body and what I do with my body.
Thank you, group. I think we brought a lot of important topics to the conversation, right? The idea of the feel safe, right? The privacy. Um, how do we talk or not in the family, right? The private setting and the public in education, right? And how we some, as I can see, access to education and sex education was not something easy. Is this your experience in high school? Wendy, or anyone else that wants to share with me how we talk or not talk about this in high school, and then bring the perspective of college from Miranda and Lauren, who is now a recent grad. So, what is the difference comparing the time that you were in college, in high school, Miranda and Lauren, and then now you, Marissa and Wendy, in high school? Can you share a little bit more about that? How is the conversation with maybe teachers, but also with your friends? Is that a space?
I think that in high school, in the sex ed classes you get, they don't talk to you abortion basically at all. And I think that's part of the problem is that no one wants to talk about it because they think that it's too much of like a touchy or controversial subject. But that's like the main problem, that no one wants to talk about it. And I think that schools aren't allowed to talk about it, and they should be allowed to.
Adding on to what Marissa said, in high school we do get sex ed classes, and we are taught how to have safe sex, but we're never taught our options as to what can happen as a result if we do get pregnant. I think that should be talked about more, our options as women, especially in high school.
Adding to what Wendy said, not in high school, when I was in high school, they didn't really teach you about like the options we had. And then if we needed any help, they didn't talk about where we could get help. They kind of just said that like, oh, if you have sex, you get pregnant, and that's like it seemed as bad, and then like as like your life is over basically. But they should be teaching how to have safe sex, birth control, the options of what we can do if anything were to happen, and just teaching safe sex.
To add on, yeah, my experiences in high school weren't always like the best regarding sexual education. It was, I felt like looking back at it now and my experiences in college, I think it was more of just what my other partners have said. It's it is just basically teaching how to have safe sex, but it was more geared towards our male identifying students. It was mostly, you know, teaching about how to put on a condom. I don't remember ever learning how to put on like a condom for women, or if there was even an option for that. It was straight to like birth control, but even then it was never, and they never explained the different types of birth controls and what effects it has on your body. They just told us like, you know, there are birth controls and they focus mostly on the pill, and that was it. When they did talk about you know, something more toward geared for our female students, it was mostly just about talking about pregnancies and unplanned pregnancies, and that was it. I even remember just saying like, just thinking or knowing Planned Parenthood almost felt taboo because they felt, you know, the teachers would just make it seem like it was a bad place. And obviously now in college, it's more, you have more resources onto what it is and how they can help you, and you realize that it's not what it was painted to be, and it's actually really helpful, and it could potentially save lots of lives because, you know, it's not just about abortion, but it's about the right to like contraceptives and what they do, the knowledge of it, and just things like that. It was never readily accessed in high school or even talked about. And I think looking back at it now, it's just really important to have that open and that those equal resources, and just to talk about it in general.
Great. So we really mentioned the importance of having those resources, right? Make available for us so we can have the conversation and have the information to help us to make those healthy decisions, right? For our lives and for the lives of our communities too. And just to bring back the idea, so conversations, you talk about the family, the teachers, right? And the high school and college. How about your friends? Is this a safe? Do you feel comfortable having a conversation about reproductive justice with your friends? Is that comfortable, uncomfortable? Why? Just a brief mention about that from your perspective.
I think that it just depends, but like with the people you surround yourself. But in my situation, I'm very comfortable with talking to my friends and my siblings about this situation. And we know that it's important to be able to talk to people close to us, because if not, then there's really no one else we can talk to it about because of that issue, that it's like often a topic that's like the conversation is shut down easily.
Definitely, I completely agree. It just depends, I guess, on who you surround yourself with. I completely feel safe talking about this with my friends, and I actually feel a little more comfortable bringing the subject up within my family. It wasn't always like that. I have a brother who's really close to my age, and it used to be just, ew, don't talk about it. That's nasty. It's not for me. But, you know, the more I talked about it, he kind of realized that it does also impact him and, you know, his future relationships or his future like significant other. And I just think it's really important to keep talking about it, even if it does bring a little bit of uncomfortableness among the people that you're talking about it with, just because it does make a difference, and it's an important topic and issue to be fighting for.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing this. Anyone else wants to mention something before we go to the second question? We good? So thank you so much. This is very important. So let's go for the second question that we're going to bring to the table. And before we start the second question, I want to invite Sue to provide a brief overview and from what is the context of the Texas abortion ban and Roe versus Wade before we bring the second question. Sue?
Well, I'm hardly an expert on the Texas abortion ban, other than I have found it to be rather frightening that we're going to ask people from any part of the United States to become self-appointed vigilantes to kind of report people who are helping other women get access to whatever their healthcare needs are, and in this case, it's an abortion. And so, in thinking about the whole issue about what's happening in Texas and other states, I realized in the state of California that for us at this moment, the right to abortion is codified because it's part of our law in California. Doesn't mean if we don't continue to vote and we get new representatives that won't change. But at this moment, the right to have an abortion is codified. However, once again, when we look at reproductive rights, it does not mean that everyone in need of reproductive health care, whether it's an abortion, whether to have a conversation about should I have a child or shouldn't I have a child, whether there's a huge health issue, it doesn't mean that all people have access to exercise their right to have an abortion if that's what they choose. And the issue for us in the state of California is that we get very complacent, and that this is not an issue to be complacent about, because his issues around reproductive rights, should I have a baby, should I not have a baby, when should I have a child, can I afford a child, really should be no one's business but their own. However, given the other circumstances that we already discussed or shared in terms of reproductive justice, we don't even have conversations. There's like that fear, there's a level of discomfort. We raised the issue with our, I think it was Lauren that said, I used to talk to it with my brother and he just thought it was gross. That even the manner in which we approach issues around sex and contraception and how we have children is really designed almost to keep us so uncomfortable that the ability to raise it, for our voices to be raised and be heard, is a real challenge. I mean, how do we become empowered so that we can speak out? In terms of ensuring that the right to have an abortion in the state of California is afforded literally and figuratively to every woman identifying woman, trans person, LGBTQ person, poor person, everyone can have access to it. And so the concern I have about Texas is that model exists, and it doesn't mean it won't be replicated, and how that replication is going to impact the state of California in terms of our own ability to continue to access care, as well as people coming into the state of California because they know that they can receive the care that they need. And so when I think about the issue, it's still around the whole idea of organizing, of having conversations, of teaching people what their rights are. Young women who are of childbearing age need to know what their rights are, that they have the right to have contraceptive, that is a legal right. This is codified. This is not something that's being made up. And so for me, the Texas is the most extreme, but we still have work to do here in the state of California. So Carla, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, so thank you, Sue. Just remind you all, on September 1st, 2021, after the Supreme Court refused to intervene, a law in the state of Texas that prohibit abortion, that for providers to carry out abortion interruptions after they detect the fetus, her activity, usually 6 weeks of pregnancy. The problem is that a lot of women don't know, right, that they are pregnant within 6 weeks. So the law also makes no exceptions for rape or incest, and really forces women to carry a pregnancy that can be very traumatic, right? Because it can be conceived in traumatic circumstances. So we're here today to talk a little bit that this is a law that is affecting Texas, but what about other people, right? Because this is a news that really caught the attention of all states in the United States, but also abroad, around the world, right? In Europe, in Latin America, everywhere. So I want to bring to the table today a question from you to answer for your unique perspective, from your position. Why should we talk about this law, Texas abortion laws ban and versus Roe and Wade, and what it means for us? So maybe if we can have a volunteer to start the conversation.
Yeah, definitely. You know, throughout Sue's presentation, I think the one thing that stood out to me was just, or the one thing that kept playing in my head was, it just takes one, you know? And in the Texas, if the state of Texas already decided that this was going to be, you know, put into effect, that we were going to have basically everyone as vigilantes, like Sue said, and you know, like Carla, you had mentioned prior to this, it puts a limit at 6 weeks. And for a lot of us, you know, that begs the question of, it's just too early, you know, that can just mean that simply could just mean a missed period. And a lot of women don't realize that they're pregnant at the 6 week mark. And that really just shows how little um, women education and their bodily autonomy really, like, just the education in general of a woman's body is talked about and is taught in schools and taught in general. Women usually have to do their own research and educate themselves on their own body, um, when we can have that opportunity for everyone, because it's an issue for everyone that this Texas abortion law exists and how it really does limit women. Um, so yeah, I definitely think it's important to talk about, and if it's already happening in Texas, it means, like, you know, there are states are looking, and it can definitely mean that it could start spreading to other states. And if the Supreme Court didn't want to do anything or didn't step in, it just shows that they don't realize how big of a problem this is and how it could potentially affect many, many women. Like Carla said, it can be traumatic, and it doesn't make the exception for that. And I think that's really, just really bad, because it just doesn't show the humanity towards women, and it forces them to do something that they may not want to do, or may not, probably cannot, and carry on. So I think it's important to just keep talking about it and keep pushing for, you know, the right thing to do, which is to lift it and to hear it from women and hear their perspective and listen to them and act on it. So yeah.
Thank you.
Going off what Lauren said, it does limit women, or it does limit women, and it also, sorry, it also stops having safe abortions. Having the abortion ban, takes away safe abortions, and those who do get pregnant and then do want to have an abortion, they also, in having the means, it allows them to travel to a different state. And also for women who are low of an income, they have to do things that they don't want to do. They would start to having access to having unsafe abortions, doing what they can to end the life of the fetus. And then, so it just takes away safe abortions.
Adding on to what Miranda said, I think we should really talk about the Roe v. Wade Texas abortion law, because it really limits the safe ways to have an abortion for women who struggle economically or low income, and it doesn't really give them that safe space to think or maybe feel like they can have bring another child into the world where they can be safe. And I think for us, I think it really, sorry, it's, I wouldn't say, I guess, a threat, I guess, to our body, because we should feel like we have the authority over our own body.
Yeah, I agree with all my partners here that like what Miranda brought up, that the Texas abortion ban is not a ban on abortions altogether. It's just a ban of safe abortions. And I think that for people of color and of low income, it's going to be extremely hard for them, especially because everyone with money in Texas will have the access to either just get an abortion in Texas by paying any doctor, or like what Miranda said, where low income people are going to have to do things that they shouldn't have to do in order to end the pregnancy. And I think that for Roe versus Wade, one big counter argument is that there's safe haven laws, but people don't understand that women just don't want abortions just not to have just not to have a baby. It's just that they just don't want to give up their body for a pregnancy. And I think that that's what a lot of people don't realize, that people don't have abortions just not to have a baby.
Yes, thank you. That was very powerful what you said, and especially bringing what Lauren said. It only takes one, right? It only takes one, and we talk here really about this intersection of race, right, and class, right? At least together, what is the impact, economic impact, and who are being impacted directly? Or women of color, low income, right? Who are the first one that are affected by. So what are the options? What are the options that we have and how that affects? So Sue, do you want to mention a comment about what our guests were saying? You are muted. Okay.
I mean, the conversation just touches on so many different issues that the right to agency over our bodies, the idea that, I mean, I've been talking about this for a really long time, but the idea that there are people that, and it tends to be men, and I mean, we can talk about feminism and patriarchy, but that's not it. But there is the majority of people that are making these laws about women and how women's bodies are used are men. Whether a woman is raped, whether a woman is the victim of incest, which is one of the reasons like the state of California looks the way it does around issues of birth control and abortion, has to do with traumatic situations that occur. But we still need to remember that as women, we should have agency over our bodies. So I'm not sure, I think it was Marissa that just said that I need to be able to decide whether I want to be pregnant or not. For whatever reasons, I should be able to make that decision. I should be able to decide if I want to have a child or I don't want to have a child. And really, for me, one of the most difficult aspects of this conversation is often we ask women to share some of our most painful and intimate stories around our bodies and the choices that we make in order to be heard. And we're not just heard on the basis of the idea that reproductive rights is human rights, period. There's no question, there's no anything. As people, as women, we deserve, are entitled to have agency over our own bodies, as well as being entitled to access all the care that we need. So that's basically what I heard these amazing young women say. And I don't know, I could talk about this forever because I'm really passionate about the whole idea of being empowered and having agency. And it really should never be anybody's business if I want to have 15 children or if I don't want to have any children. Because on both sides, right? If someone has 15, they go, what's wrong with that person? And we have these whole other conversations, and it's always around women of color, poor women, and the trans community. See, she just wants to have another baby so she can get more money for welfare, right? I mean, it's this constant kind of attack on our integrity, on our core values, and our belief systems. And I think all of you have kind of touched on aspects of that. And I'm really like, it's so exciting for me to hear you all speak, and you're so articulate, and thank you. So thank you, Carla.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you all, part of our roundtable today. as Sue said, there's so much we can keep talking about the theme, and this is the idea, right? This is why we create this space. We create this space to have this conversation and to open also the door for having future conversations about it. So let's now move forward for the third questions that we have today here for our group. And the third question is, what can we do to open the conversation in our community on the topic of reproductive justice? When I'm talking about opening our community is, yes, with our family, also the private setting, but also the public one, our school, with our teachers, with our friends, maybe in a community center or in spaces like this. So what can we do to open the conversation in our community on reproductive justice?
I think what we should do about opening a conversation in our community is just creating that safe space to talk. And at home, I believe, especially parents sometimes, I know it's a hard subject, but I think it's important not to like lecture your child. Just let them have that safe space to open up to you. I think that's really important.
I completely agree with Wendy. And I think that just to educate people to not be afraid to be that one person that just opens the conversation, and to educate especially younger generations and our parents or grandparents, and just know like the importance of being just that one person to start the conversation.
Going off what they said, yeah, being the person to talk about it, also talking about it like in education, having events for the community to talk about.
I think it's really important, like everyone said, to just open that conversation. And like we all mentioned before, you know, it does take just one person, and having that education and that knowledge of what we're fighting for and why we're fighting for it can inspire many people. And, you know, what Wendy said and Marissa articulated is that just creating that safe space within public sectors, you know, it can start off in a classroom and then evolve into a club, which fights, you know, with not exactly fights, but challenges the education system in general, goes to the district and, you know, demands like more accountability towards like sex ed or creating classes that educate not just the female student body, but everyone in general of what it entails to be a woman, you know, because like we are experiencing it right now, there are a lot of challenges with having control and say over our own bodies, and it's important to speak up about these issues, and just having that space and having people be behind you and encouraging you and supporting you to challenge these social norms, cultural norms within our own families, and those traditional beliefs of reproductive rights and reproductive justice being taboo can no longer continue, and to just break those barriers.
That's great, thank you. So what I hear here is really about recognizing, right? It is a hot subject to talk about it. It's not easy, maybe easier for some families than other families, but the important things that we want to be free, maybe is this something that you agree, and safe to talk about it? What is your perspective and be the idea of free and safe to talk about it, right? And create that safe space, right? How do we create a safe space? So this is a question that we get to you is, how can you create? How do you feel safe about creating and engaging that conversation? And as we said, be the person, right? How can we be that person, that first person who is brave and open that conversation? You all very bravely came to this conversation today to express your unique perspectives and your experience, which we validated a lot. And I assume that a lot of people also who are watching us may think like you and have, hey, this is what is happening in my life too. As you know, it's a hard subject, but having put that knowledge out there to open that conversation, right? And the idea of the family, but also in the school and with your friends, and maybe create a club that we can feel safe when talking about that, right? So do you want to add more to this conversation? You're mute.
Oh, thank you, Kelly. The final thing, just when I hear, and we were talking about the North County San Diego Women's March and our ask, which is our call to action, is to remember that this is all of what we're talking about really involves civic engagement. Who do we talk to? How do we talk to people? Who does this impact? So if you're involved, if your issue and your passion might not be women per se, but it's environmental issues, it impacts women's reproductive justice, right? It impacts women. I mean, when you start learning about cancer clusters, who is impacted by cancer clusters? It's usually poor women, right? So when we look at issues of environment or the environment, to be able to have a family and raise them in a safe environment where we don't have to have conversations anymore about, oh, I have to tell my son to be careful when he walks outside because he's black or brown and law enforcement is going to be on them. Like, those issues impact reproductive justice, right? Because I do have sons and I do want to raise them in a safe environment. And I did have to leave one environment and have no money so I could raise them in what I thought was going to be a safer environment. I mean, so my right to have a child was impacted financially tremendously, or being a single mom, or just basically I'm thinking about it as myself or anybody that has children. Why is it so hard for our moms to have this conversation with their children about having babies when they've all had babies? I mean, what is it culturally, right? It's not as if they don't know how we make babies, right? They do not know how babies are born. And yet, as we get to that age and we want to start asking questions, it becomes very taboo, or, well, we're not going to talk about that yet, or we whisper about it. So all of that becomes part of how we start having conversations in our families, with our friends, or whether or not you're involved in other kinds of actions, right? Because so much of what we do ties into this bigger picture around reproductive justice. So that's my last 2 words, or 15,000. Thank you for giving me my platform, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sue.
And thank you also. I was so excited. I'm going to send Miss Glennon text every day and tell her y'all just don't need to go to class anymore. So thank you so much.
We still need to go to class, so please go to class. Go to class, find your passion, and create your narrative, a positive and constructive narrative on reproductive justice. Before we end this roundtable, I want to invite you all, if you have any asks or any final message that you want to share with us in regards to reproductive justice, we appreciate.
I think like what we all kind of said is just to not be afraid to just be that one person to open up the conversation about this very, very important subject.
Adding on to what my sister said is to talk about it with your family, your siblings, and then also teaching them, and then also not to be afraid to take that one first class that I took at college. So where I learned about what is reproductive justice, reproductive rights, and feminism, and all the good stuff.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your participation. We are so happy to hear from your amazing voices and experience and understandings. We want to use this opportunity also to invite you all to our event, which will be an online event live on Facebook and YouTube. And it's on January 22nd. Is a event on reproductive rights versus reproductive justice. So we will have different activities, different videos, and you can find more information on our Facebook page, North County San Diego Women's March. Thank you so much for your participation, and we look forward to see you soon, especially if you can join us on January the 22nd. Thank you.